Today, we're going to give you the top 5 kingdoms in Rise of Kingdoms as ranked by their power, by their kills, and also their dead troops. So if you were wondering which kingdoms are the strongest and truly the toughest fighters in the game, stick around in this video for the top 5. Hello my friends and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and this video is sponsored by the makers of Rise of Kingdoms, and this data was gathered from rockboard.com. I'm really hyped to bring you the top 5 kingdoms in Rise of Kingdoms as of the end of July in 2022, and this number changes a whole heck of a lot. These rankings change a lot, and the reason is because, very simply, the timing of when KVKs happen. It's very difficult to make a list like this because some number of kingdoms that you would normally see near the top of this list are in the middle of their KVK fighting or are waiting for their troop return from KVK, and their power will shoot up, but it's not here. So this is why we're going to get a look at power, we're going to get a look at kills, and we're going to get a look at dead troops, because obviously, as your power drops, your kill count and dead troop count should be going up. So the cross-section of all these things should give us a pretty good picture of which kingdoms are truly the strongest in the game. Of course, the only real way to know which kingdoms are actually the best is when they duke it out, like we've got 60 GT and 1307 doing as we speak. But before I get ahead of myself in the rankings here, let's kick things off with number 5 by power. And keep in mind, I'm going to start by sharing with you the Imperium power rankings, which means the way the game calculates Imperium power is if you're over 150 million, for matchmaking and power purposes, they just count you as 150 million. We know those players actually can contribute much more, which is why we'll also look at the Uncapped power ranking after we go through this one, which is the Imperium power. So let's get to number 5. As it turns out, the number 5 on the list is actually in this same KVK where the fighting is happening right now, and that is Kingdom 1302. There are a number of alliances that you'll probably recognize from both Arc League and from my having fought them in the past. That includes Song at 12.9 billion power at this moment in time, and also Duck at 14.2 billion power, and they assuredly have other alliances that are high power in their kingdom as well. They clocked in at a grand total of 27 billion Imperium power. This is the top 300 governors by power in their kingdoms, and for the players that are over 150, they're just counted at 150 million. So pretty impressive. The top 300 players, 27 billion power. At slightly over that number is my own kingdom, clocking in at number 4 in the top Imperium power rankings. To show you exactly what that looks like, the alliance powers in my kingdom now are 14, 13, almost 12, 11.7, 9.7, and 8.5 billion power. A little bit of rounding there, but that shows you how strong these top kingdoms are. They have a lot of alliances and a lot of high power players. There are, of course, exceptions, and we'll talk about that a little bit further in the list, where they have fewer alliances, but a ridiculous amount of power stacked across a small number of players. What you're looking at here is a 4-man alliance, 2 academy alliance setup. But man, these academies, they put in their fair share of work in the fighting as well. This brings us to the number 3 by power in the list, and I didn't realize that they had grown so much in power, but they did have a very good migration recently, and that is 1412. Now, 1412 just entered into a KVK. They actually registered for Desert KVK, but then couldn't get an opponent, and they very recently patched the game so that you can actually switch formats before the end of the registration period if Lilith figures out, hey, we're not going to be able to find a match for you, and that's what they did. So here they are at Imperium amidst a bunch of kingdoms that are not Imperium. So I don't know how ultimately the allies were chosen here. I won't get into all the drama. What I'll do very simply is show you the power of the alliances in 1412. By the way, number 4, my kingdom, clocked in at just over 27 billion power, just barely over the 1302 kingdom. And 1412 is clocking in at 27.3 billion. So there's some pretty tight banding, actually, right around that 27 billion Imperium power range. The alliances here include DVL at 12.5 billion power, KNT at 12.1 billion power, 12K at 10 billion power, 12HK at 11.6 billion power, and then 412A at 13.1 billion power. And that's just the alliances hugging the temple. This brings us, by the way, to the top 2 kingdoms by Imperium power in Rise of Kingdoms. And they're actually fighting each other right now in the same KVK. Clocking in at number 2 is Kingdom 1307. 1307 has been in this game for a very, very long time. And a lot of the original players are, to my understanding, still there. You may recognize that Dragothian has an account in this kingdom as well, and they are duking it out against the number 1 kingdom by Imperium power, and that is 1960. So their Imperium powers are actually very close to each other before this fighting started for these zones over here, and that is 30.3 billion power for 1307 and 30.7 billion power almost for 1960, and they're actively duking it out in this pass here. And I say actively duking it out, but I guess maybe things are just chilling right now. Nobody's burning, nobody's fighting. We're all just singing Kumbaya. What's the point? Nobody can burn each other anyways. That's fair. I will say at this moment in time that there is a big difference between 1307 and 1960. And as I was showing you earlier, like, man, 1960, they got a 20 billion power alliance. Just yesterday when I was recording, they were 22 billion power. So this is important to understand because a kingdom like 1960 actually has a smaller number of players that are super strong. And you'll see just how important that is in the next set of rankings here, which gets a look at the uncapped power. If we said, hey, these players that are over 150 million power, let's count them at their true power. This player that's, 305, we'll count them at 305. This player that's 458, we're going to count them at 458. How do these rankings change? Well, they change a lot. Without getting a look at every single kingdom in depth, because this is going to be an extremely long video if I did, the number 5 kingdom by uncapped power is 1122. They sit at 28 billion power. The number 4 kingdom is 1534 at 28.4 billion uncapped power. And then, if you were wondering where was 556 in the power rankings, that's because their uncapped power is way higher. They have a lot of players with a ton of power, like Baba, which puts them at number 3 by power in 556 at 28.7 billion uncapped Imperium power. And the final 2 kingdoms actually remain in roughly the same rank. Weirdly enough, then it's 1307, and number 1 is 1960. But what's weird is that although 1307 doesn't gain a ton of power when you uncap their power, 1960 shoots up a cool 3 billion. They go from about 30.7 up to 33.2 billion uncapped Imperium power. Wow. But power does not tell the whole story. There's a lot of kingdoms that do their fair share of fighting that, hey, they're just low power now because they aren't here. Like, you may be wondering, where's 1365? You may be wondering, where's 846? I think at the time this data was pulled, they were waiting to get troops back, and they're still in their KVK. So surely the kills and dead troops will tell a different story. Let's find out. If we load up the kills on the screen, and unfortunately this data was collected on 7/13, so it's way older than I would like, but if we put this up on the screen, you can see that actually 1365 is just on the edge of being on the top 5 by kills. They have almost 900 billion T4 and T5 kill points, which is actually just straight insane. That is so many. 1034 makes an appearance on this list, although they weren't on the power list. Here they are on the kill list with 945 billion kill points. Jeez. And then the kingdom you've seen me fight the last 3 KVKs, 556, is at 1.08 billion, really 1.09 billion kill points at the time of this recording. I mean, when you've got players like Goodfather that have 35 billion kill points, and Baba, who's got 29.4 billion kill points, Yeah, it stacks up, man. It really does. It should be unsurprising now that you see at the number 2 ranking by kill points is actually going to be 1846. And they've got a lot of really stacked players as well. But I think the hallmark strength of 1846 has been their depth of players rather than having tons of top-end players, which is why, well, they're waiting for troops to come back. So that's maybe not the best characterization, that they aren't on the power rankings, but you get the idea. This kingdom has gone for the strategy of having many, 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 many alliances worth of players to the point where they actually, if I'm not mistaken, went and deleted a bunch of troops to get their migration going. And even though they aren't on the power rankings right now, if we just look at their alliances, Sin is at 10.8 billion power. LIU is at 12.9 billion power. The alliance holding the temple, Wib, is sitting at 13.6 billion power. And maybe they just got their troops back. I don't actually know. Here's Makote. They must have got their troops back. He's at 351 million power, 23 billion kill points, 23.7 technically. I mean, yeah, they have a lot of depth in this kingdom. As it turns out, the kingdom that's number 1 on the list, and, I feel like I'm patting myself on the back here, which is really not my intention, is 1254 at 1.1 billion kill points, which is kind of insane. So if you look at the kill points of each of these alliances, 653 billion, 550 billion, 315 billion, 236 billion. The Academy alliances are at are at 120 billion and 63 billion kill points. This is a lot of kills. And the thing is that the deaths stack up too. I'll put this whole ranking list on the screen so we don't have to kind of go through each individual kingdom. Clocking in at number 6, and I'm including them because they were in the top list by power, is 412. So they are in this list at 5.7 billion dead troops. Then 365 at 5.9 billion dead troops. 1960 at 6 billion dead troops. 1846 at 7.16 billion dead troops. And 556 at 7.19 billion dead troops. And at the top is 1254 with 7.42 billion dead troops. That is a lot of dead troops, okay? That's really crazy. I really wish that I had all the data for everything pulled all at the same time, but unfortunately, at this moment in time, on the Rockboard site, the data that we've got is from 713. So that's what we have to work with, and that's what formed this list. And I feel like pretty much any of these kingdoms in the top are all in the same weight class of just being extremely powerful and not really kingdoms that you want to be fighting against if you're not also in a kingdom of similar power. If you enjoyed the video, do me a huge favor, throw a like on here and consider subscribing, and let me know down below in the comments if you want to see more videos where we rank the top kingdoms by power. Are there any kingdoms that you expected to see on this list that weren't here? Definitely let me know down below in the comments, or you can search them up on Rockboard. Thank you again for the data and having all that public. Much appreciated. Until next time, you have fun smashing your enemies.